Hey, y'all, and welcome to Culture Cult, where we are one podcast with 197 countries to explore stories, history, and music from. I'm your host, Marie, and this week we're actually doing travel stories. So that's when you send in your best travel stories to be read aloud, and then I, along with the guest, read them out back to you. So just send in your favorite travel stories to culturecultshow@gmail.com. So today joining me is a recurring guest for this season. It is Lollie, my grandmother, also a scholar, also true Southerner. Hello, Lollie. How are you?
Hello, Marie. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Are you having a nice Sunday?
I am in a beautiful fall.
So she's in Atlanta and I'm in LA. So I feel like y'all are having a proper fall.
Well, the colors are beautiful. We're looking forward to a colorful November and an exciting December.
Yes. Okay, you want to tell a little bit about how you grew up in Atlanta?
Yes, thank you, Marie. This is a pleasure to talk with you again about travel. I am a Southern born, I guess you might say, with a heritage in Atlanta. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the condition of the South, especially back in the 50s. That was a transitional period for the South after the war. So you're going to hear that in my stories, I think. So I think you'll enjoy these. I have two stories. One is a story about Alabama. Now, I don't want to pick on Alabama. It's a wonderful city. I mean, a wonderful state. But Marie, these two stories happened to us on a trip there. Now, the first one is funny, but there is some irony in it. And catch the irony at the end. It's unbelievable. And the other one is really open-ended. You can decide what you think is true or not true. Well, the year of the first one was about the middle of 1950. Well, our adventure begins with an invitation from a relative who invited my husband, JR, and his sister, Chrissy, invited the three of us to a dance recital, which was featuring a niece of ours who was 6 years old. It was her first ballerina performance. Our plan was to leave Atlanta about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday and arrive in Marion, Alabama about 6:30 that evening for the recital at 7 o'clock. Okay, you see, a 5-hour drive of 200 miles was remarkable because that would allow for the traffic and weather conditions. Even though the weather was beautiful, the traffic on a flow on Highway 78 going west out of Atlanta was never so slow. It is already after 5 o'clock. There is a town on the map that we can cross the river called Free Ferry, Alabama. I think we would take that route and save fighting all that traffic outside of Birmingham. We looked at the map, and there was obviously a sure shortcut to Marion, if only we could get to Free Ferry, Alabama. So off we went. Unfortunately, when we arrived at Free Ferry, we did not see any signs of it being a town. Instead, we saw a boathouse. As we approached it, a man came out of the little house and said to us, "Sorry, sir, you just missed it." Missed what? I said, knowing the answer before we asked the question, because now we could see the tail lights of the ferry going slowly on its way, gently making a wake across the river. You missed the ferry by 10 minutes. The facts were clear. Free Ferry, Alabama was literally a free ferry across the river. And to make matters worse,
They weren't lying.
The boathouse manager informed us that the ferry took 1 hour to go across and 1 hour to return, which would delay us 2 more hours if we stopped and waited for it. Now what? The night was closing in on us, and even though we had gained an hour going from Eastern time to Central time, we would never make our trip to Marion in the time planned. The ferry manager informed us that the town just north of the Free Ferry landing was only about 25 miles away, and there was a bridge there, and we could cross the river there. The road was generally clear of vehicles for several miles. And then we began to see what looked like a traffic jam just ahead of us. Cars were backed up, and we could see highway patrolmen walking from car to car. All we could see ahead of us were patrolmen and policemen and red tail lights of the cars all on the right side of the road, for the left lane was blocked by patrol cars. Soon there were several cars backed up behind us. We were truly boxed into place. As one of the patrolmen approached, JR asked him, "What's the holdup? What's this about? Has there been a major traffic jam here? Or an accident?" "Accident?" the policeman said. "How unlikely was that in South Alabama on a Saturday night on a rural road? Traffic jam," he said. "Well, no," the officer said. "Didn't you know this is the big, I mean really big, this is the big Ku Klux Klan rally. I mean, this is really big. Even the Grand Dragon himself is here. Yes, sir, the Grand Dragon himself is here. Welcome to the Ku Klux Klan parade."
Oh, my God.
"Can you please steer us around this?" JR asked. "We're just trying to get to Marion, Alabama." "Sorry about that, sir. You're part of the Ku Klux Klan parade. Cars are coming in all directions. You can't get through this without going through the park, and that's where the rally is going to be. Everybody is going there. You'll have to go there because you're in the line." "I'm not doing this," Chrissy declared. Unfortunately for her, she was inclined to hysterics, and this inconvenience overwhelmed her. She was fearful, and she became distraught. The people on the side of the road were jamming the streets and waving and carrying lighted torches. They were exuberant to see us, and pressing against the car, they welcomed us with smiles and cheers. "Welcome, welcome," they said. Overwhelmed with all the excitement, poor Chrissy tucked under the back seat and tried to hide. Seeing her do this, I tried to bend under the dashboard, and I didn't want to be seen either. Sit up, JR howled at us. "If these people see you doing this, they'll think you are some sort of spies. They'll think you're up to no good. Sit up straight, wave and smile. Act like you're all part of it." "Part of it," I said. "I can't smile at them. I don't even like them." I howled back. "If somebody recognizes us in this terrible display, what then? If somebody sees us that knows us?" "What?" JR said. "You surely think in this mob of people, anybody we know will be here?" "Oh, I wish I had a paper sack," I said. "I would put it over my head." We had crept along in a slow pace into an intersection. From our right came 3 pickup trucks filled in the open back with cheering young Klansmen decked out in full sheet regalia. Now the marching mob went wild when they saw these young Klansmen. They were thriving members of the Klan, and the park was where we were all to go. As we got close to the park, we could just see the ring of fire as the Klansmen formed their rallying stations. But fortunately for us, a policeman approached us and without question directed us to the exit from the park to the road. By this time, we were too exhausted to even discuss what we had just seen and escaped. We drove on and, of course, got to Marion late in the evening, having missed the ballet show. But after all that was said and done, we agreed that we did see a show far more memorable and far more dramatic than a ballet recital. Now, I want you to hear the irony of this. As I said in the beginning, most stories have irony, and this one certainly does. The fact certainly is apparent in the story of the Klan. The irony begins with our friendship with a very nice neighbor. We had been neighbors with the family of Dr. Samuel Green for years. Dr. Green was a prominent Atlanta physician. He and my father were friends. His wife, Mrs. Green, and my mother were friends. They had 2 children the age of my brother and I. We were all friends. We grew up together in the same school, in the same church. The Greens were very well known and highly respected in Atlanta. And they were known throughout the city. They were known throughout the church and the community. In fact, Dr. Green was known throughout the South as a very prominent Atlanta physician. Not long after our experience with the Klan in Alabama, there was a lawsuit filed in Atlanta against the Klan. And one of the principal witnesses in the suit was none other than Dr. Samuel Green. What we learned in that procedure, that Dr. Green was the grand dragon of the Ku Klux Klan.
What? I don't remember this part. Wow.
He had national control over the entire Klan, over all the country. The Klan sort of went down during World War II. But Dr. Green, at that time, the head of the Klan was called the Imperial Wizard. Dr. Green revived the Klan, and they would meet on Stone Mountain and have their rallies like we were going to see in Alabama. They would have it at Stone Mountain in Atlanta. And Dr. Green named himself, instead of the Imperial Wizard, he called himself the Grand Dragon. But we didn't know it till the lawsuit was filed.
Wow.
He was our friend, our neighbor, and the Grand Dragon, known to us as a good friend and neighbor, was none other than Dr. Samuel Green. There was never any indication that Dr. Green was guilty of illegality, and he was never put in jail. But the irony is, JR was wrong when he said, nobody's going to know you out there.
Wow.
In this place, nobody's going to know you, and you're not going to know anybody. The irony is, somebody would have known us, and we would have known somebody. I just wonder what Dr. Green would have said if seen us in his grand Ku Klux Klan parade.
Wow.
My other story.
Wait, so before we get into that, I feel like we have to sit with that story just for a second.
Okay.
Because what you experience is truly historical and something that definitely can and probably does still happen today, but not so right there in your face where you could stumble upon it. Secondly, thank God in a way that you looked like the people that they approve of. Imagine if you were any other color and you got stuck on that road. Honestly, this is a terrifying story. It's funny in a way because you could not get to that ballet. No matter what y'all did, y'all could not get to that ballet recital. No. It just wasn't worth it. But in the same way, this is a horror story. This is really terrifying.
It is very terrifying because it was so approved of.
Yep.
People didn't stand up against it. It was more or less accepted that this is the way that people act. And I think there were groups of people who petitioned against it. And of course, my family, my father, and all of my relatives wanted nothing to do with it. And we really didn't pay a lot of attention to it. It didn't happen much in the area in which I lived. We didn't hear much about it. It was more or less in the rural areas. But the fact that they spoiled Stone Mountain that way, it is such a shame that they did. They disgraced that memory, and I hope it will be repaired. Stone Mountain is under new leadership now, and I'm hoping that they can restore it as a national monument to valor and erase some of the ugliness that went on. And really, it was because of Dr. Green, and to know that he was so respected. I can tell you many stories about Dr. Green later on that will shock you, but I think to have been misled by a wonderful physician who was so well respected. But thank goodness those times are over. We've become enlightened. We've become tolerant of other people and their beliefs. And God willing, we'll never go back to that kind of era when we
that's a huge reason why I'm doing this podcast, is because the more we learn about other people and other cultures, the less hate. Because hate comes from fear. So these people were fearful of everyone, that anything that wasn't them. Also, just to end on this story, I will not forget the town where that you had that horrific moment. I also had a horrific moment because I had a huge speeding ticket in Helphin, Alabama. Isn't it on the edge of Georgia and Alabama?
It's the first town you get
Yep,
to
it's the
when you
first town.
cross the line.
They just letting you know, everyone in the world, if you are driving between Alabama and Georgia, watch out for Helphin. The cops are hiding. They are ready for you. And they always have construction, but there's no one ever working. So the tickets are very expensive. I know that's not as dramatic as your story, but I just want to let the world know that Helphin is some trouble.
Well, you're exactly right, Marie. And in the time when we had Highway 78, it went right through the town. And if you were not careful, you went through little towns like Heflin, Alabama, and Leeds, and these were speed traps. The police hid behind billboards. And if you went 1 mile an hour over the speed, they were on you.
Yeah,
They would take your license away from you or threaten you in jail.
Wow.
And it happened all over the state.
This goes to show traveling today is a lot easier in the most obvious ways, but also it's just a lot safer than back then, where you could just get stuck on a road and we'll see what happens. And you might run into a KKK parade and hopefully you are the right color, honestly. But,
well,
it's scary.
I didn't see anybody but people that looked exactly like us. I'll have to say that. I didn't see anybody that didn't look like us.
It's a fascinating story. It really is. What is your second story?
It's a little different. It's about another Alabama adventure story. And this involves our Aunt Chrissy, your aunt. She was on her way to move to Atlanta from Mississippi. She was driving her own car and expected to arrive in Atlanta about 4 o'clock in the afternoon Atlanta time. She had had car trouble on the road out of Mississippi into Alabama. And fortunately, a farmer and his wife saw her stranded on the side of the highway. Now, that's Highway 78 coming out of Alabama. She was going east, and the farmer going east to his farm saw her on the side of the road, helpless. The farmer looked at her car and determined, this is more than I can fix. I think you got to have an expert to come. But I tell you what, you go with us to my farmhouse and you can call a relative and they can come and get you. And I'll try to get somebody to come get your car for and fix it for you tomorrow. Well, she called us and we decided we would go over and get her. Now, this was going to be late, a long trip halfway across Georgia and all the way across the state of Alabama. We got the directions directly from the farmer and we started on the way. The farmhouse was way off Highway 78. It was not far from the Mississippi line, but it was down in the deep into the country of Alabama. And it was on a large acreage on a dirt road. The directions the farmer gave us were thorough, and we found the house without any trouble. Well, when we arrived at the farmhouse, the couple had prepared a wonderful old country dinner with ham.
Oh, I love that.
We just had an absolute, like we were old family reunion. We just had the best time with these total strangers. So after dinner, we sat together and dined on a delicious meal and talked about what we were going to do with the car. Chris's car had been abandoned on the road about 5 miles from where the farmer's dirt road went in to Highway 78. So it was some distance from where we were at the farmhouse. So the farmer said, I'll go with you. We'll push the car off the road so nothing will happen to it overnight. So he went with us. We got to the car down the side of the road. He took the luggage out of her car and put it in our car. And then we bid him good night and we went on our way. And he graciously said, I'll take care of everything for you. Call me tomorrow and I'll tell you who's got your car. So we started about 11 o'clock p.m. on our way back to Atlanta, going east on a 2-lane highway, 78. That highway is dark and it's lonely. It was not highly populated. It was mostly farmland and the houses sat way back. We didn't even see any lights on at midnight. We were about 5 miles from where the dirt road of the farmer's farm got onto the highway. We could see a big fire blazing right in front of us. A fire there in the back end of nowhere seemed extremely odd, but it was a blazing fire. As JR slowed the car to a few miles per hour, we could see that it was indeed a very bad fire, and it was a car on fire. It was a big sedan, and there was intensely burning within the interior of the car. The whole car was ablaze. We could only see the steel outline of the body of the car. The flames were leaping out the windows, and the warmth of the heat could be felt as we approached cautiously on the left side of the road. JR commented, "No one should approach that car because that blaze is so hot. There's going to be a deadly explosion when the blaze hits the gas tank." Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, a woman in a flowing white gown appeared from around the front of the fiery car.
Nope.
She boldly stepped into the road in front of our car and waved and yelled, "Stop, stop, please stop." She was young looking with a look of helpless terror on her face. Chrissy screamed, "Keep going, JR, keep going. Don't stop, don't stop." I screamed, "JR, stop, stop. The woman needs help, stop." Chrissy and I began to argue, but JR said nothing, but began to pick up speed and accelerate and kept going straight ahead. The screaming woman was relentless and ran so close to my window on the passenger side that I saw the expression on her face. JR gunned the engine, swerved the car, barely missing running over, and took the left side of the road into a moderately deep ditch.
Oh my gosh.
Full of rubbish and tree limbs. There was no other sign of life anywhere in the immediate surroundings or in the distance. This flaming car was in an isolated spot on the highway with no lights visible. The night was as dark as a tomb, except for our shining headlights before us and the yellow glow of the fire behind us. The thickness of a moonless night and the cry of a frenetic finger suddenly appearing was uncanny. But we did not stop to question the reality of it, for no doubt the scene was as real as the car in which we sat and on the road in which we traveled. We knew we were witnessing something, whether criminal or tragic. It was something frightening and unique. But the fact that JR understood the workings of engines and cars, he was able to gain control of the car out of the ditch at a high rate of speed, and he emerged from the ditch with some grinding, but fortunately there was nothing damaged in the underside of the vehicle. We drove on not knowing what was ahead, but I couldn't let the image of the hysterical woman out of my mind. I looked back at the scene out of the rear window and I could see her silhouette against the fiery backdrop of the burning car. And I'll always remember her continued frantic wave with undying hope that we would turn around and come back to help her. When I first saw the picture scream, I was reminded that's exactly the way she looked when she looked in my passenger window. "We should have stopped, JR. We should have stopped," I said. No, you did the right thing, JR. They both agreed. They said it was a setup. They believed that someone was lurking around that car to rob or overwhelm a passerby. JR said we would try to find a police station in the next town and report we had seen. But all little towns were closed and asleep by that time of night. We did not see a payphone on the streets to use to call the highway patrol. And by the time we got to Birmingham, it was too late to help her, for whatever was going to happen had already happened. The next morning, JR called our farmer friend and described the situation. Would you please look on the highway and see if you can see what happened to that poor woman and her car? He gave him the exact location of where we had seen the car. The farmer said he would go on the highway and look for what the trouble was, and he would call us back and let us know. That afternoon, the farmer called and said that he had driven up and down that highway 78, 10 miles in one direction, 10 miles in the other, all the way back to Mississippi. And there was no police report of a car, of an accident, a fire, of a woman, anything untoward that had happened that would corroborate our experience. The farmer did say, I did see something, though. I drove to the place where you said you saw that woman in her car, and I saw the ditch, and I saw that the ditch was roughed up, and there was debris and a tree limb in the road. Well, we never found out how this strange thing happened. Did it really happen? Did we imagine it? Had I been traveling alone, I might have thought, I just dreamed that. I must have gone to sleep at the wheel and imagined all of that in minute detail. But we each had each other to corroborate our experience. We all agreed we did see it, we saw it, we heard it, we reported it. It did happen. We confirmed the truth of it without any explanation, and we never knew exactly how it happened. But we do know that each one of us over the years would say, did it happen? Did we really see what we think we saw? And we would all agree, yes, it really did happen.
Wow. That is one of the most chilling stories I've ever heard. It's the fact that the ditch was there, which means that's proof that you really did go in that ditch, and that burning car should be there. Nevertheless, the woman, the car, the burning carcass of that cart should be next to that ditch, and it wasn't. And the woman, I have a question about the woman. You say she's in a white flowy gown. Was she in the same era of clothing as you?
Yes, but I wouldn't say it was a wedding gown. It was just a long white dress. She did not look like a bride. She just looked like an ordinary person in a long white gown.
But did she look scuffed up, like burned?
No, she looked perfectly normal, except for this frightened look on her face. She had long hair. I don't remember the color. What I remember so much was her waving and her standing in the middle of the highway. She was willing to be run over. And I have often wondered what would have happened if we had stopped. What would have happened?
Such a hard call, because that does happen. I think the instinct in me would be like you. I would want to risk it just to make sure she was safe. But yeah, that definitely happens where people get robbed because that woman will be a distraction. And I think it is smart to say, okay, well, the next town over, we'll make sure. But then it became out of your control because there was no next town. And yeah, we just have to hope maybe there was another car.
We didn't pass any cars between that and the town. Remember, this is country Alabama in the mid-50s in the dark of night. And the street lights are very, very dim. They would turn the street lights down. They were not very bright at night. And I remember those spooky feelings as we would go from little town to little town. See, the highway would go right through these little towns. That's what you're talking about, speed traps. These little towns, but there were no highway patrolmen. Now, remember, back in those days, people did not travel at night. And I think we said that because there was no way. If you gave out of gas, you're stuck. You're on the side of the road. And that's a frightening thing. You filled up your gas tank on Saturday afternoon because there was nobody open on Sunday because of the blue laws. The blue laws were the churches had said that you cannot do any work on the Sabbath. But because of the blue laws, everything was shut down. And so you didn't travel at night. You filled up your gas station at the gas station by sundown on Saturday because you were not going to get any more gas till Monday morning. So we took a chance traveling that hour of the night, but we had no choice. Fortunately, we had plenty of gas.
Wow.
But what a frightening story. And every time I see that picture of the scream, that's exactly the way that woman looks. So frantic, needed help,
Yeah.
and should we have helped her? I guess I'll always wonder about that.
It's crazy. They both happen with the same people, same highway, and they're both different kinds of terrifying. Running into the KKK and also running into possible ghosts or a possible mugging situation, or just her situation in general is terrifying. Just her alone.
They were.
Yeah. So that's just what's the highway called so we can warn people? Highway 78. Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you so much for telling those stories, Lily. I love those stories. It takes place in a different time, but we all know what it's like to drive alone at night. And sometimes you feel a little bit eerie or in a situation and you don't know how to describe it to a person because it was the word you used, unique, you know? So,
well, and I would say, Marie, never travel without your cell phone. Be sure it's charged. Whenever you go get into your car, be sure your cell phone is charged all the way. What a blessing that would have been if we could have had a cell phone to have gotten her help.
Yeah.
I think if we could have done that, we might have parked somewhere nearby down the road until we could have gotten somebody to make sure she had gotten help. But when you're out there in the back end of nowhere, no lights, no evidence of anybody anywhere. And where did she come from? How did she get there? Who was with her? Who set fire to that car? Cars don't ordinarily are combustible on their own. Something's got to start a fire. You may get an engine burnout, but it's not apt to set the whole car on fire. Somebody had to have planted a torch or something in that car. And it probably, JR said, the thing is going to blow up. They're going to hear it all the way to Mississippi when that thing explodes. So the mystery remains.
Yeah. Such great stories. Thank you so much, Lollie, for telling those. I love the stories. And I end each of these kinds of episodes, the travel episodes, I ask listeners to send in their favorite travel stories. So I'm going to read out one. It's short, but it's pretty funny. So this one's called The Homeless UCLA Story. It goes, as many of my friends know, I went to school at UCLA. I wore my school hat every day of my trip, and as a result, found more other alums across the country than I could have hoped for. One night in Nashville, around 1 a.m., I'm having a conversation with the artist who had just gotten off stage. Well into the conversation, I glance outside and see a man in a UCLA hoodie walking down the street. This is my first time seeing another person from the school outside of California, and I was understandably excited. I asked my friend to watch my drink, throw a napkin over the glass, and take off running down Broadway. I finally catch up to him to introduce myself. I tell him I'm a recent graduate and I didn't expect another Bruin this deep in the South. He says nothing and stares at me blankly. After a while, I ask, did you go to UCLA? He goes, nah, man, I went to prison.
He
said, sorry. He exclaimed, removing his shirt to reveal a torso and arms full of bobby pin tattoos. I lost my shirt a few weeks ago and found this in the street, but God bless you for going to college. And he shakes my hand and goes off into the night. The confidence he had in his response still haunts me every day, as if in his mind, one's only two options after high school are to go to prison or university in Westwood.
Oh, that is so sad. Oh, poor man.
Oh, but it's also, he said, no, I went to prison.
Honestly, an elation and then a letdown. So sad.
I know.
I hope he's living a good life.
Me too.
Although he's on the streets.
Well, he seems like he has a good attitude, and most of the time when you have a good attitude.
Well, yes, he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, and that's the way to have a good life.
I hope he won't go back to where he came from. I hope he can do better than that in life.
Oh man!
Well, what good stories you got.
I know. Yeah. So these are people who have written in, and they can either write their name. This one was anonymous, but it's just any kind of story. You can have stories like yours that are incredibly shocking and unique, and some are just quirky little things like that. So yeah, just to wrap up the episode, I just want to again say, so each season we're going to be doing a couple episodes that are really in depth about a country that I've spun the globe and I've landed on. And then there's episodes like these that are just casual travel stories. So to send in your travel stories, email culturecultshow@gmail.com. And yeah, so we'll have to go see what other stories come in. And thank you.
Marie, you remember that in New York, they had a program on, and they would have stories about New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the announcer, this is some years ago, the announcer said there's 7 million stories in New York, and this is one of them. Well, you can say that. There are 350 million stories in the United States of America, and this is one of them.
Wow. I love that. I didn't think about that as a way, a city being a bunch of, the amount of people is that many stories. That's actually so
Everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
Everybody. Because every life is unique. Every life is important. Every life is worthwhile. And the more we share our experiences, if we can get hope and optimism from those stories. Just like the man from UCLA. He may not be leaving the best life, but he had optimism and humor, which is going to get him a long way in this life.
Yeah. And just the different walks of life and how they came together on a t-shirt. The t-shirt brought them together.
Brought together by a t-shirt he found on the street.
I love that. He said, no, man, I went to prison.
How much irony is in that he would wear that t-shirt and see an alumnus of UCLA. There's irony in just about every story. If you can look for the irony. Irony in Shakespeare, irony in the ancient Greek playwrights. There's irony. If you look for the irony, it makes a story twist in a way you did not expect. O. Henry was the master of irony. And if you haven't gotten acquainted with O. Henry, I advise you to do that. He was wonderful. Even more maybe than Edgar Allan Poe. So irony makes a story memorable. It makes it unique. And it's unexpected.
Yeah, unexpected. That's the best thing. That's the best way to tell a story.
Puts a twist at the end.
Yeah.
And you think you know the story, and then you hear the end. Oh, is that how this works? Is this how it fits together?
Yes. Well, I have to wrap up the episode, Lollie, but thank you so much for joining me again. You've been clearly this season star of this season one. Season one star.
I appreciate it. I have loved doing it. I've loved doing this with you and traveling with you, even by imagination. Yes. It's such a rewarding experience. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. So we'll definitely see you for our other episode where we are talking about ancient Greece and ancient Sparta. And
I think you're going to love those stories. They are a little bit different. I didn't travel at the time these stories were written. This is long before I was born.
I hope not.
We're talking about true antiquity here.
Yes, true antiquity.
You're going to get an appreciation for maybe not just women. You're going to get an appreciation for the men of ancient times too. It's hard to believe, but you will.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming, Lollie. And just remember to check out our Instagram, Culture Cult Show. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.